Hi and welcome back to Hilltop City Life. It's great to be back with you guys. We really felt actually that we wanted to share a little bit more on gifts and talents. We promised a while back that we would go into a bit more detail about that, and then we never quite did so. And as you can see by the length of my hair, it's been several months, so my apologies.
You can judge when we made the videos by how long Ellie's hair is. Yeah, we said in a couple of the videos, didn't we, that we were going to give you some practical ideas on how to implement your gifts and talents, how to actually step out and, rather than just the idea, the concept of how it's good and how God wants us to act on these things, but what that actually means practically. It's all well saying it, but what do you do? So that's what we're going to have a little chat about today.
Yeah. So we felt it was important to start from, to give you an example of Joe's ministry and how that started as a tiny seed, and how you got to the idea of Jovis Bonhovis. So
yeah, that's right. We wanted to use a real life example, not just because I like talking about myself, but because having been through a similar experience that we've been talking about over the last few years, coming to a place after running a successful business, which then kind of all went awry, and finding myself in that place where I was questioning, well, what am I actually supposed to be doing for God? So we're going to kind of use that as an example to play off, and some of the things that I came across that might help you. So it was about 7 or 8 years ago, our business kind of took a turn for the worse, and we were left in a place where we were thinking, well, hang on, where's God in this? We thought we were doing the right thing, and we thought we were following God's plan. We were very prayerful, and we were sort of just your normal everyday Christians, and we thought we were going in line with God's will, and we thought, well, how has it gone wrong? What's happened here? And I don't know, many of you people watching this might be in a situation or might have had experiences where you've thought to yourself, well, I thought I was doing everything right, I thought God was with me, and yet this hasn't worked out the way I expected.
I think, though, God allows us to come to the end of ourselves with something that perhaps isn't wrong in itself and of itself. It's good to be a person that works and who works hard and wants to be successful. But when God has a plan for you that's different than that, and you're perhaps not recognising that, but then He will allow you to come to the end of yourself and get to a point where you think to yourself, actually, what are we doing, and where are my gifts and talents in this, and how am I serving the kingdom of God? Where is this all leading? What treasure am I storing in heaven? Yeah,
it was very much like that, wasn't it? I mean, we were just fighting for our little slice of the pie in a saturated market, and it was all a bit of a treadmill, and I was really struck at this point by the parable of the 10 talents and the guy who buries his talents. He's not described in the word as being humble or a bit meek or a bit shy or just somebody who doesn't like to, go out and make a big fuss, which you might think that was the sort of person he was, but actually he was described as wicked. Yeah. And that really struck me, and I had to look at that and think, well, why is this person wicked? And I think it's really a case of him denying what God has made him to be. He's almost saying, I don't believe that God has made me capable. I don't believe that God has given me these gifts. I don't have enough trust to step out and take some risks for God at my own expense or at my own potential detriment.
And thus disempowering God's ability to use him through disbelief. And the talent was taken from him and given to the faithful servant.
Well, it's possible that he was stealing from God in a way. If we belong to God and those gifts are from God and then we don't use them, we're taking away from the kingdom.
And it's what we've been called to do.
It's what we've been called to do. And so one of the things that I've learned along the way is that when God closes a door, we have a tendency to be disappointed. But really, we need to thank God just as much when he closes a door as when he opens one that we think he should be opening, because it's always for something better with God, whether that's spiritual and eternal and something that we don't see in the here and now, or whether that's something in the world to do with our journey on this earth. But it's always something better.
It's putting us back in the right direction. So let's move on then, because let's start talking about your ministry and how then that transpired.
Yeah. Okay, well, practicalities. This is what we promised we were going to talk about. When I was in that situation and I was having to look at myself again, we've talked about discovering what your gifts and talents are, and figuring them out. The practicality that I ended up facing was, what's next? What do I do with it? So tip number one, top tip number one, you can never do this enough. Go and sit in a place by yourself in the quiet. That is incredibly important, and do that for as long as it takes. And there are two things that you need to be doing. One, I firmly believe that you need to invite God into your thoughts. You need to invite God to speak to you. And I'll go to Ellie. Ellie, you talk a little bit about inviting the Holy Spirit in to speak. Now this is the practical application.
It's important that you don't go off on your own and have your own agenda, and that you are abiding in God, and that you are the branches connected to the true vine. Without God, you can't be fruitful, and you can't live out your calling in life. You've got to keep going back to God, to the helper, and asking him for his guidance, asking him for his wisdom, so that you can stay on track. He's the one that's going to give you peace. He's the one that's going to give you security when you're feeling fearful, when you're not sure you can do it, when it seems a little odd and a bit silly or quite scary. You must go back to God, and he is the one that will give you that reassurance and will give you that peace in your heart. That's the Holy Spirit's job to do that for you.
So that might sound a little bit sort of theoretical, but it isn't really. The practical tip number one is to take that time to sit by yourself. I believe in prayerful meditation as well, so don't be worried about taking time to think. Just have a think to yourself. And this is possibly practical tip number two. When you're talking about your gifts and talents, think about what you love. What do you want to do for God? What should you be doing with your life? Think about what you love. Because if for the rest of your life you're motivated by what you love, then you're absolutely onto a winner. Don't think about what you want. Put that aside. If you're starting to think, how can I get a car or how can I get a big studio, forget that. Don't think about what you want, think about what you love. And I'm not talking about loving a big block of cheese that's going to make you overweight. I'm talking about good, decent, godly, holy love. That love that brings you joy.
Yeah. Is your heart with the homeless? Is your heart with refugees? Is your heart for the children? Is your heart to be a speaker of truth and to get that people know the truth about who God is? Is your heart in worship, in music? Where is your heart? What is it that brings you to life? And that's where you're going to find the seed of your talent, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's a seed that can only grow if it comes from love and it comes from a godly love. Now, quite a lot of people watching this, if not everybody watching this, will have a similar experience to me, which is, if somebody's talking to you about a career move, perhaps, without the spiritual angle, without the godly angle, without the faithful Christian angle, they might first ask you, well, what are you really good at? In truth, a lot of us might feel, well, I'm not really good at anything. I'm okay at some things. I like this, I can turn my hand to that, but I'm not really good at anything. And this is what I did. Now, going back to Jovis Bonhovis, this was a long time ago now, about 8 years ago. I thought, okay, I can draw okay. I've always put on silly voices, and it was that time in the quiet of my room that really enabled me to recognise that was anything close to a talent, because in the world you won't even see it. I've spent a little bit of time on stage. I know how to operate a camera and a computer, and a few of these things, they all stacked up. I wasn't brilliant at any of them. Jack of all trades, master of none. But when you're there on your own with God and he's speaking to you, he said to me, children's videos. Now, I love kids and I have a passion for them. I think it's a dark and scary world that they grow up in, and we have an opportunity to bring them such light and hope. Now, combine that with all these little skills that I had, and it started to paint a picture of children's videos which could inspire and excite and encourage them. So I started thinking, well, I could make some puppets out of my kids' old clothes. I could paint up some sets. And I went to bed that night and I lay in bed, and it all came to me quite easily. I guess that's sort of how I'm built. I don't want to put you off if you don't get an amazing flash of revelation from God. It was a lovely God moment for me. I got the theme tune, the names of the characters, how I was going to cut out the boards. Went into the garage. You can have a look at a photo and a video now, I'll put on now. I went out into the garage the next day and I just started doing it. Just started, made a start.
Yeah.
And this is crucial, you see, and I believe this to this day because I still do it. You have to work with what
sharing
you've got.
your horse.
Don't ever let what you haven't got stop you from doing what you can do with what you have got.
Yeah.
Rewind that and listen to it again. Don't ever let what you haven't got stop you from doing what you can do with what you have got.
That's biblical. It's do not despise the day of small beginnings. Don't despise what God's given you. Whatever resources you've got, whether they are tangible resources or whether it's just your time, who you are, don't despise what you've got because it's valuable to somebody or to some people and it can be used and it will grow from there. But you have actually got to use it in order for God to be able to help you to grow it.
Yeah. It's in the movement, isn't it? You know, it's when we move that the Lord directs our paths.
Can't be stagnant.
It doesn't say the Lord directs our location. You know, there is trust that the Lord directs our paths. You know, you often hear that saying, don't you? Oh, God has a wonderful, amazing plan for your life. You know, God's got great things lined up for you. And you think, well, why is it a secret then? And why isn't God telling me? God's got great plans for your life, but you're never going to find out what they are. And that's because God is in your movement. Those plans unfold when you start taking steps. It doesn't say the Lord will direct your location. It says the Lord will direct your paths. The Lord will direct your paths. So you can make godly choices and step out in confidence that God is there with you.
I think as well, it might be something that you might never have imagined. You know, when I became a Christian, and still now actually in myself, quite an introverted, quiet, shy person. So when somebody in the church came to me and said, would you like to speak at the front? That was a bit of a, well, no, I like to sit at the back. I don't like to speak. I shake at the front. But take it to God, and God said, oh yes, you are going to stand at the front and you are going to preach. And 2 years later, it's still difficult for me, but I've moved on and I've progressed and I'm preaching and I'm on a teaching course and I'm more confident and I believe that God has chosen me. I believe I've been anointed. Now those first few months, even maybe the first 6 to 12 months, I was the double-minded man. God can't have chosen me because that's not my personality and I don't like standing at the front and I've got nothing to say and nobody wants to listen to me. And that was the devil, that wasn't God. God was saying, actually, you're a new creation in me and I've chosen you to do this. And though you are weak, yet I am strong and I will give you the abilities if you will step out and do what I've asked you to do. And as I've stepped out every time, God has been there to carry me. He gives you the words. He gives you what you need at the right time. That's the thing. You've got to be brave.
Yeah, I think it's about being obedient and trustworthy as well. Like Ellie said, God gives you the right things at the right time. So if you're thinking you've always fancied doing art which glorifies God, you know, and that's the thing that you know in your heart of hearts, but you've just got one manky, bristly old paintbrush. You don't say, well, I'm not going to be able to do that then. You do the absolute best that you can with that paintbrush. You prove yourself faithful. And God will provide you with what you need at each step of the way. I mean, this set that we're sitting in here now, this is a good example. I mean, Ellie and I would love a huge studio with, you know, with a lighting rig and 3 guys on cameras and beautiful artists designing the sets and stuff. But instead, we do what we can with what we have, and God will give us what's right at that time. So take steps. And I want to pick up on one thing that you said as well.
This isn't the first set either.
No, this isn't the first set.
So we've moved on.
Yeah, go back to episode 1 in this series.
We've got some lovely curtains.
Curtains in the back,
So, you know, small beginnings, moving steadily, being faithful, doing what God's called you to do.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were.
No, that's all right.
You had a point.
I did, yeah. So I want to show another couple of videos as well. When I first started Jovis in the garage, you know, I didn't know that I was going to take it to UCB, but they saw something in it. You know, God was in it. And for the first 2 seasons, which you probably see playing now as I edit this, I'll figure out where I'm going to put them, but playing about now anyway. For the first 2 seasons, we used those same board cutouts that I made in my garage. The puppets all still made with cardboard and bits of our kids' old clothes, and they're seen all over the world. They're in Australia and New Zealand, the USA and the UK and Scandinavia and North Africa, and it's just incredible what God's done by me letting go and saying, there's something I'm not doing right here, Lord. What is it? And I trust you, even though, and I keep looking back here now because this is the thing that I wanted to say. When I went in that garage and I was doing those things that you saw that photograph of earlier, painting those boards, cutting them out, you've got no idea how many times I stopped and thought, this is ridiculous. What am I doing? What am I doing? What must my wife think of me? What must my wife think of me? Get a job, Joe, Why are you doing that? And then going in front of the camera and acting like a clown with all these things that I've made with my kids' clothes.
Okay, so how did we combat that, and how did we get through it?
Well, this is important.
Well, when it was difficult, and when we fell out, and when there were arguments, and when we got upset, and when we wondered where the money was coming from, the only thing that you can do is take it to God and speak to God about it.
Yes.
And every single time, God's words were, keep going, keep going. And, I had a peace. And so I knew that what the world could see didn't matter, because God was saying, keep going, just keep going. And so that's what we keep doing. We keep going. And if we look back now, the difference is enormous, and there's still a huge journey to go, but that's okay. It's a journey with God, and it's using your gifts and talents. It's seeking first the kingdom of God, and then all of these things will be added to you. It's not the other way round.
It's funny you should mention arguments, because in that first picture when I first went to do Joe this, we'd had a big falling out, and I'd shaved my own head. Was it about the haircut that we had a falling out?
Yeah.
So I went, no, I'm blimmin' well doing it myself, and I got the clippers out.
Yeah, it's all good fun.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, it's not a smooth ride always. But I tell you what, I just wanted to mention money, because you might well find yourself thinking, well, it's all very well for them. Look, they've got this nice house and they've got all these cameras and this lighting and whatnot. But the truth be told, money has been really, really difficult and really tight these last few years. The numbers don't add up. If you look at the spreadsheet, we don't have enough. And yet somehow we have never gone hungry.
Supernaturally, it's worked.
We've always been able to pay the rent.
Yeah.
People have just, when we've been desperate, there's been a phone call and somebody's given us a gift.
And said, here's £500,
Yeah.
or we think you need to have a cheque for a camera. We would like to buy you a camera.
Yeah.
We'd like to do this for you. The money was provided to send me on a teaching course.
Yes, it was.
And that's about being faithful, and it's about stepping out and saying, I'll do what you say, God, and then God can bring in the provision. But you've got to move for him to bring it in. If you're standing still, like Joe said before, God can't work with somebody that isn't moving. You've got to move and progress.
So whatever you do it as if you're doing it to God and for God and as a service to God, and do it in faith and trust and invite him in. So we've got to wrap up now because it's getting near that time. I'll just try and squeeze in one last thing, and then I'll let Ellie have one last go. But just have confidence in God, because he is there. Be faithful and do something. Spend that time and do something. Step out. Step up. Step out. Be amazed.
I think it's in Romans, forgive me if I'm wrong, we'll put a link at the bottom, but I'm sure it's in Romans where they talk about the gifts of the Spirit. And there are gifts of prophecy, there are gifts of being a teacher, there are gifts of being able to worship, there's a gift of serving, there's a gift of generosity. And so it might be actually that you're a really generous and kind person, or that you're a person who has such a gift for blessing others with the way that they speak to them and making them feel special. It might be that you have a lovely home that you can open up to people and that you can welcome them in, and that you can share a Bible study group. That might be a gift or a talent. You might be blessed with money, financially, and therefore you might be able to bless others with gifts of money to enable them to do things. Look for those areas and don't think anything is too small. You know, where is there an opening in your church that just simply needs somebody to serve? It doesn't perhaps take much skill to make coffee. I make coffee. I'm on the rota. But it's a service, it's an act of service, and it's a gift and a talent to be able to smile at somebody over the counter and welcome them in. It can be as simple as that to start off with.
We need to wrap up now, or we're going to get cut off because the memory card's going to run out of space. Shooting in 4K.
Yeah,
so thanks very much for watching.
Yeah, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.